Butler is refusing to sign an extension with the Golden State Warriors, which has tabled trade talks between the Heat and the Dubs. Number one, the Warriors feel like they are very much in between a rock and hard place at this point. De'Aaron Fox, Zach LaVine are now off the table, not trade targets anymore. And in all honesty, there just does not seem to be the impact guy the Warriors are looking for available for trade at this point. I mean, you'd like to think Zion Williamson would be a target, but I don't see New Orleans trading him at this point. Jimmy Butler kind of has the Heat right where he wants him at this point in a lot of ways. Yes, he's 100% toxic. Yes, he's handled this poorly, but yes, so have the Heat. And at this point, it does seem as though Jimmy has the upper hand. And I want to talk more about Jimmy and that situation with the Heat and how that is evolving, but also talk about the Warriors and how they're pretty much screwed, it seems, in this video. So before we hop into it, yes, I do want to note, if you didn't see my video yesterday on the De'Aaron Fox trade, yes, my 2K channel did get hacked. The channel has been taken down. I'm not certain if I'm going to get it back or not. I'm really not sure. I'm working as hard as I can to try to get it back. For the time being, I'm going to continue to upload these NBA Cup videos, and I'm praying that I'll be able to get the 2K channel back as quickly as possible. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay, but I know a lot of y'all do watch my 2K channel as well. That's my main channel, so at the end of the day, it is what it is. Not a lot I can do about that, and we're going to move on from that in this video. But point being, when I say Jimmy Butler has the Heat where he wants them and kind of in his hand at this point, Young Nair, I'm sure many of y'all know him, another YouTuber, made a good point recently, or earlier today actually, where he basically said that the Heat either trade Jimmy to wherever they want to trade him for pennies on the dollar, because he's not going to be willing to sign an extension, and therefore he will opt out at the end of the season. And I think Jimmy's at this point, he doesn't care. If he doesn't go where he wants to be traded, he'll opt out at the end of the season, and therefore teams aren't going to give up assets of real value to bring in Jimmy Butler. So obviously at this point, with the way that the situation with the Heat has ended, with him now being indefinitely suspended, with them having taken him out of the starting lineup, which I thought was a stupid decision in the first place, in all honesty, they are very much in a position now where they almost don't have a choice, because he's not going to come back to the Heat. That ship has sailed. There is not a situation now where I thought there was a couple weeks ago, where if he doesn't get traded by the deadline, maybe he just decides, okay, fine, I'll suck it up and I'll come play for the rest of the season with the Heat. So he is either not going to play at all if he doesn't get traded by the deadline, or going to get traded to a team he doesn't want to re-sign with, like the Warriors, or like whatever team the Wizards want, or the Wizards, or the freaking whatever team that the Heat could trade him to just get rid of him. Like, not that the Wizards are actually that team, but not a team that he wants to go to. But if he doesn't go to a team that he wants to go to, and it seems like that team is the Phoenix Suns, then the Heat will basically trade him for nearly nothing. And that puts the Heat in a tough spot, because it's either trade Jimmy where he wants to go, or trade him for nothing, or suspend him for the rest of the season. Sure, he doesn't get paid. Sure, he doesn't make the money, but he's got plenty of money. He'll be fine. And then he leaves in the offseason anyway, and you don't get anything at all. So Jimmy's kind of got the upper hand at this point if he is willing to just accept the possibility of not getting paid for the rest of the season, or playing the rest of this year in a market where he doesn't want to be. And it puts the Heat in a situation where their best case scenario is to trade him where he wants to go. The problem is, if he wants to go to the Phoenix, the fit there doesn't make a ton of sense in terms of the swap itself and that deal, because Bradley Beal would have to be involved. Another team would have to take on Bradley Beal's contract if the Heat aren't willing to, which requires a 3-team deal. And there aren't very many teams that have the flexibility for that type of a deal, especially now that teams like the Bulls are off the table. I don't see a team like the Bucks, who have been rumored as a potential suitor, not suitor, but potential fit, as being a good fit. Because I mean, I think even the Bucks, with Chris Middleton's struggle this season, would rather probably keep Chris Middleton, despite his struggles, on the better contract. They don't want to add Bradley Beal's contract to a team that already has a non-defensive guard in Damian Lillard as a centerpiece on this team. I mean, I just don't think there are very many teams that are going to be willing to take on Bradley Beal's contract. And so the fit with Phoenix is going to be challenging at best to do. And if it's not Phoenix, I'm not sure where it is at this point for Jimmy, because there's not a team that's going to give up real assets for him. I don't see the Rockets or the Magic or whatever other teams you might think of giving up real assets for Jimmy at this point. And the lack of flexibility now of Kings like the Bulls and the Spurs and the Kings being off the table as trade pieces and trade partners, I feel like as well, is going to be challenging. And it puts the Heat in a really uncomfortable position regarding Jimmy, and it makes it very fascinating to see where he is going to go. But in terms of the Warriors, they're just screwed because they don't have, like I said earlier in the video, a target. I don't know who you can go after because Jimmy Butler was the one guy. And there's almost a part of me that thinks Golden State might just be like, we'll trade for Jimmy anyway. But then they're not going to be willing to give the hold up there is if he's not willing to commit to signing an extension now. Golden State doesn't want to trade for Jimmy right now unless they give up basically nothing. And in order to make contracts work, they can't just give up basically nothing because one of Draymond or Wiggins pretty much has to be involved in a deal to make contracts work, unless potentially there's some sort of alternative three-team deal again that changes salary stuff significantly. But I just don't think with the Warriors cap situation, they can afford to take on Jimmy Butler's contract without moving one of Wiggins or Draymond Green. I don't see why they would do that, especially without the guarantee of Jimmy re-signing. And it's just like the Warriors don't have a spot, are screwed because they don't have a star. They don't have a guy to go get next to Steph Curry, unless, of course, something were to materialize out of nowhere, like Luka being traded for Anthony Davis did. Now, that's the most shocking trade in NBA history. I find it very unlikely that some other megastar is going to wind up just randomly being traded in some shocking deal. And again, the Warriors don't have the assets to make that type of deal. I think there's only one GM stupid enough in the NBA to actually make that move and trade a superstar player for a bad return, and that is apparently Nico Harrison, the GM of my Dallas Mavericks. Still so mad, but I'm gonna make another whole video on the Mavs because they played terribly against the Cavs, and that's a whole other video that I can make for later today. But point being, the deal doesn't make sense, really, honestly, for either side. And at this point, I feel like the Warriors are in a rough spot because they are basically screwed in terms of just pure talent. It feels like they are the 11th best team in the Western Conference at this point, especially considering now the fact that the Spurs just got better. The Spurs are only 2 games back of the Warriors. The Spurs just got way better with the addition of De'Aaron Fox without significantly hurting their rotation whatsoever. The Mavs, despite the tumultuous deal that just happened and the chaos that is the Mavs fan base right now, are still probably going to be a better team because of, I mean, a team of Kyrie, Clay, Quentin Grimes, PJ Washington, whoever else it may be, Anthony Davis, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, yada, 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 is still a good basketball team. The Suns, despite their problems, same thing with the Timberwolves, are still both probably definitely better teams than the Warriors as well. The Warriors are screwed because, like, even with the Kings being worse, the Spurs being better means they're still probably the 11th best team in the conference. Like, there's a good chance they miss the play-in. And even if they make the play-in, they're probably not making the playoffs. And if they do, by some luck stroke of God, make the playoffs, they're getting blown out in the first round, almost certainly. This is not a team that is going to be competing with the best teams in basketball unless they play perfectly, and that is not going to happen 4 times in a 7-game series with the roster that they have currently. So I feel bad for the Warriors. I don't feel that bad for the Heat, but I think they're in a tough spot as well. And I think Jimmy, if he's just accepted, he's willing to figure out whatever the rest of the season is, no matter what it is. It kind of has all the power at this point, and I don't know. This is going to be fascinating to see how this situation shakes out over the next 3 or 4 days or so before the deadline, and see what happens, because at this point, I truly have no idea where this Jimmy Butler situation could go. So I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Be back with more NBA content very, very soon, and I appreciate y'all. Peace.